guys, welcome to Arepas del Gringo. Today we are going to be making almojabanas. Almojabanas are a type of cheese bread found in Colombia, and they are pretty simple to make. They take about 5 ingredients and they don't take long to cook. So we're going to make those today, and if you're not familiar with almojabanas, it's a type of bread that is made in Colombia. And one of my favorite, or a few of my favorite things going to Colombia is one, of course, arepas, 2, fresh juice. You know, just pretty much in the United States right now, it's hard to find, fresh juice. Pretty much anywhere you go in Colombia, you're going to find fresh juice. One of my favorites is called lulo, and you can't find it out here, and it's just amazing citrus. It's sort of like an orange type drink. Another one of my favorites are mora, which is like a raspberry. But one of the exciting things that I really enjoy going to Colombia for is the fresh bread. And if you're in a small town or even a large city, you're going to find bread pretty much wherever you go. And it may not always be by your eyes, it could most likely be also by your nose. I mean, you honestly could close your eyes and walk around, which I may not recommend, but you could find really, really nice, delicious bread cooked in the morning. And sometimes it's from a bakery, sometimes it's from a streetcar, or someplace has a section of their business which has these types of bread, where you could find pan de bono, arepas, empanadas, almojabanas, and a lot of other fresh baked items. So today I thought I'd try it, and I've made them before and I failed because I think it was the baking powder. So there's a baking powder component, and the baking powder that I used after I made them, I noticed that it had expired. So the baking powder is going to be really helpful because it's going to make them nice and fluffy, like little pillows. But outside of the baking powder, we're going to be using some arepa flour, and we have about 300 grams of arepa flour, which is about maybe 1.5 cups to 2 cups. We have 1 egg, and that's beaten. We beat the egg, and this is room temperature. This is probably another secret, is ingredients do really well with this recipe as room temperature. And the oven's ready. It's been preheating at 450. I have a bit of milk here, and we're probably going to use about 5 to 6 tablespoons of it, not the whole thing. It's basically as needed to give it some texture. We have some queso fresco, which is essentially just a white, or queso blanco, which is like a white cheese that has some salt in it. You could also use cuajada, which is sort of like a, I guess, cottage cheese, but not as clumpy. It's more of a soupy cheese. And then we have some salt. So the queso fresco does have some salt in it already, so just be careful with your salt. I mean, if you want it to taste a little bit more salty, you could of course add a little bit more. And then just a little bit of sugar. So I mean, we have arepa flour, an egg, a little bit of baking powder, which is 2 tablespoons. We have 2 teaspoons of sugar. We have about 300 to 400 grams of queso fresco, and this is how it comes. This is the package size right here. So I'm actually just going to cut that up. I didn't purchase another one to compensate for that little bit extra. 5 to 6 tablespoons of milk and just a little bit of salt, and that's pretty much about a quarter teaspoon. So let's begin. Alright, so I have my oven preheated to 450 degrees. 450 degrees is about 232 degrees Celsius. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my arepa flour, which is essentially cornmeal. So this is the same ingredients that I make my arepas with. I'm just going to get a little spatula here. So I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of sugar. I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of baking powder, and again, just make sure your baking powder is within the expiration date, because this is actually an active ingredient which is going to make these nice and fluffy. And I'm going to add in just a pinch or so of salt. Okay. Next thing, I'm just going to pretty roughly chop up this cheese, and it calls for about 400 grams, and this is slightly over 300 grams. So it's going to be a little bit less, but that's fine. Just going to chop this up. And we want to get it nice and crumbly, so I'm going to actually cut the pieces kind of small. Consistency is a nice little trick here, that will make those just a little bit smaller. Now, once this is at a good size, we're going to add in the egg, and it will be easier to get rid of lumps without the egg inside it first. So that's why I'm just spending just a little bit of time here, just to make it nice and smooth. And this is a pretty good consistency. So the next thing, we have 1 egg room temperature. And immediately before adding any of the milk, I'm just going to start kneading it. Now this should also start to increase the size of those lumps that we removed, and that's fine because we want to start to form a dough. So I'm not worried about really making these lumps smaller now. I'm actually looking to make this form into a ball of dough that I can actually physically knead. So once the egg is pretty much mixed around in there, I'm going to start putting some pressure, and I'm going to start forming this dough. And it is at a, it's at a little dry consistency right now, so I'm going to start adding tablespoon by tablespoon milk. This is also room temperature milk. This is 1 tablespoon. We'll add in 2 tablespoons, and we'll do 3 tablespoons. So this is about half of the milk that I'd like to see inside this recipe, but since we're using a little bit less cheese than it calls for, it might take just a little bit more to form things together. Now this is going to cook for about 15 to 20 minutes inside the oven, and we just want to keep an eye on them when they go in there because they're going to start to brown. And this loaf should make about 6 to 10 almojabanas. Again, room temperature milk. So this is going in, and this should do it. Get it nice and mixed together here, and we're starting to get to the texture that we want. I can start to pick it up. The cheese makes it a little tricky to, stay together, so we just want to make sure we don't add too much milk, because the more you knead, the more it starts to become the texture that we want. What I don't want to see are too many cracks, because that means, the dough is going to be a little bit too dry for what we're looking for. But you want to be able to, push your fingers in it and leave dents without it breaking apart too much. I'm going to add just a little bit more. And I think that should do it. So we're looking for a little bit more of a smoother texture, and we're just about there. I'm just going to do a little test what we want. I'm spilling everything everywhere. We just want to do a little test. I want to be able to form these without too many cracks, and they're kind of a little too dry. 1 more tablespoon, so now we're up to a little over 7 tablespoons, and that is totally fine. And this should do it. Okay, so now I'm just going to move these away here. And I'm going to put this on my little cutting board. I'm just going to roll these out, and now we're going to cut it in half. And I want to get a few of these here, so let's cut those in half. So now we have 2, 4, 6, 8. So we're going to be getting pretty much on target of what I said that we would be needing. So the next thing that we want to do is I like to just, roll it into a ball first so we can start to form them. We want to make the bottom flat and arc the tops up just a little bit. So they're almost like an arepa. Make sure the edges are nice and smooth. This one's a little bit bigger, so it probably will be handled a little bit better. Now, presentation is really important. I mean, if you see these on the street, you're going to know exactly what they are. But this is arepas del gringo. I'm still working on the way presentation looks. I can get the flavor pretty well accurate, but it's an art just like making arepas. It takes a while to learn how to form things. I didn't have my parents teach me or my grandparents teach me, and going up the chain. So this is mostly I've experienced them many times eating them, and I've seen them being made behind a piece of glass or something like that, but never in my house. So we just want to round those out, seal up the cracks because I don't like seeing those cracks. Alright, so I'm very lightly going to grease this pan. I just don't want anything to stick. We're just going to spread that out. We're going to place these with a couple inches between them, and I have another tray for the others. We're going to put those into place. They are going to expand slightly. And next we are going to put them in the oven. Alright, so I'm going to place these in the oven, middle rack, 450. Beautiful, they smell amazing. They look pretty good too. See how when you push down on them, they have that nice little pillow? That's exactly what we're looking for. Beautiful. I mean, the edges do have some cracks on them, but next time, maybe add just a little bit more milk. Let's take my cutting board here. And what I want to do is cut it open. Oh, nice and soft. Beautiful. Look at that. Fresh, hot almojabanas. The texture on the outside, crunchy on the bottom, very thin layer of crunch, nice and pillowy inside. These are so delicious that my kitty cat, Lupe, also was so tempted by the aromatics coming out of the oven. So I will determine if that goes on the blooper reel or if that gets added to the side. But these are nice and hot, fresh. You can't get any more fresh than this. This is one of those things that I really look forward to going to Colombia, and I'm really excited about trying one of these. Thank you very much. Please like, share, comment, visit arepasdelgringo.com, and we'll see you next time. See you.